Dark Souls is the second game of this style from developer From Software. Fans of the first game, Demon Souls, will find a lot to love in this game, but with a new game comes new lessons to learn and a welcome new start for people who were put off by the overall challenge of the first game, as well as its lack of an overworld. Will Dark Souls claim your soul, or should it be left to play with the dead? Dark Souls does have a story, but it for sure is not one that leaps out at the player and tells itself in any standard manner. The game starts off with an opening cutscene, and then after there it's up to the player to pretty much discover what the world has to offer for themselves. I kind of found this to be refreshing, however, from all the games that are currently on the market nowadays with their really linear storylines. Small hints about what's actually going on are pretty much peppered everywhere in the world, and if the player does take the time to stop and piece things together, it becomes quite the epic tale of a world that's pretty much currently torn to pieces, and kind of how you're integral to help them put it back together. Dark Souls looks fairly decent on both the 360 and PS3, however the graphics are not the highest that I've ever seen pushed out by a developer. Sadly, the game also has some real frame rate issues in the later locations, with one of the worst being some place called Blighttown. The frame rate there drops consistently and it's just not great overall. With that being said, however, I will say that the enemies have some of the greatest animations when it comes to battle. Enemies will reel back with each solid hit you lay into them, and this has the side effect of being amazingly helpful in combat when it comes to timing your counters and your blocking. It's just really cool overall, and it looks really fantastic for that part. Make no bones about it, this game is for people who like to be knocked to the ground and then pick themselves up and come back for more. If you're not a fan of a challenge in the game, then turn back now and save yourself a world of pain. For people who do enjoy a challenge, this game is one of the best to ever exist. Not only does it challenge the skill of the player, but it also makes the player do research outside of the world, and what I can only assume the developer was trying to make into some sort of metagame. It's really kind of nifty if you're into it. Basic combat in the game is about how well you can control groups of monsters coming at you. Each enemy, no matter how weak they are, is still a threat to your life, and if you're not paying attention, they can pretty much take you out. Combat also is controlled with the L and R buttons, which function as your left and right hands. You equip items into them and use them on enemies in the game with the auto target function. It's very similar to a Zelda style game, so if you've ever played those games, you'll be pretty familiar with it. The multiplayer in this game is handled in a rather kind of odd manner. A player, if they wish to PvP, can use red soapstones to summon themselves into the world of another player and then attempt to defeat them for something called humanity, which is one of the game's currencies. Basically, you're either in an alive state or an undead state, and it kind of affects what you can do in the world. However, white soapstones can be left on the ground for players that are in human form to summon players that are in undead form. They can then team up to defeat a boss in the game. The hosting player gets help with the boss, and the undead player gets humanity if the boss is defeated, which they can then turn around to use to become a human player to summon other players into their game. The odd thing about this entire process is that there's no voice chat, which can make coordinating to defeat massive bosses a little hard, but again, that plays into the overall challenge of the game. Overall, I'm going to have to give Dark Souls a 4 out of 5. This is one of the few games in all of 2011 that I thought was really unique and interesting, and if it were a little easier to party up with people that you knew, it would probably be in contention for my game of the year. Again, that being said, it's a really good play, and if you don't mind it being challenging, you'll definitely have a good time with it.